Hello, everybody. Welcome to ETHDenver, and we are in the judging day, and we're super excited to actually give this talk about resilient community. Myself, Francesco, with Crystal, and yeah, we're super excited to be here. Let's deep down on our topic. So, welcome every builder. I see in the audience different type of peoples, from developer, from builders, MVP builders is really great. Maybe some DevRels, but hey, let's get it started. So what are we talking up today? So we want to kind of like speak about what are developer ecosystem, why do we need that? We'll speak about also roles of hackathon, and let's redefine what developer relation is all about. We want to also create and show you how we can create a safe space for the builders, going around and create new ecosystems. Then we actually speak about some frameworks, like the builder hierarchy of needs that we created in the back of the days. And then we'll speak about, actually that's why we have Crystal, we'll speak about self-awareness, resilient leadership, but most important, why your community building need to have a purpose-driven mission. And then we open up for Q&A. So everybody here is open to ask us questions, but most important, we will do a small fireside chat to deep down on the topic that we want to discuss today. So, about myself, I'm Francesco, I'm part of the DevRel team at Consensus, and I've just been in communities, in developer communities for the past decade, and I'm super excited to show a little bit those frameworks, those lessons learned, all the things that I did it wrong, and yeah, it's just exciting to be here. So let's speak a little bit about the importance of developer ecosystem. I will not ask you guys why this is important, but it's extremely interesting to see. So building cool products and cool technology is not enough. You want to surround yourself, but amazing human beings that are advocating for the space every time. The need for a vibrant community that knows and loves your tech is one of the most important factors that there is today. And we see also around different ecosystems, not just layer 2 ecosystem, but anybody that is building developer tooling and products. And then, very important, we need to speak the same language in terms of like metrics, OKRs. How we can do that? We need to build some specific frameworks on how to align on different developer activation, both offline and online. So, just a quick side note, understanding hackathon is extremely important. There are different ways to do that. The reality of many hackathon is different, so you have different ways. The important things here to understand is that you need to show how you can engage prior the hackathon, but also like activate developers post-hackathon activation. There are always some common feedbacks, but most important is that you need to learn from each hackathon, go back to your engineering team with feedbacks, and learn from that. Every hackathon is a way to grow and support the community further. So we spoke about different topics. Now I want to deep dive a little bit on the developer relation side, right? We have always two natural division around DevRels today. We have the development side that people want to work on different APIs, documentation and tooling, and then you have the relationship side, right? People that want to create tutorials, they want to advocate for the space through all these non-traditional marketing activation, like technical meetups, developer meetups, and it's actually quite good. After a lot of time and seeing how organizations are moving forward today, we always see that there are two main categories that you can, and this is a suggestion, so you can take that as an example, but you could also divide these developer relation teams in developer evangelism and developer advocacy. So now we're coming to this framework. So we need to have a true builders need framework, right? So we need, as we mentioned before, a standardization around activation and developer ecosystem. How this framework need to be fully tailored on Web3 and blockchain developer communities. And then this framework today need to be agnostic to products so that also other companies and organizations can apply to that. And they can speak the same language. So without further ado, I hope you guys remember this. Raise your hand if you remember this Maslow. Okay, cool. So basically what we did, we translate this in the in something called Francesco hierarchy builders needs that basically is a full dedicated framework to see what are the activation and where these activations stand for. And based on this, we put some examples, and I will link you guys also with some deep down. But you can see right now on the lowest level, you have stuff like flagship hackathons, access to resources, basic education and trading. Without this being solidified, you cannot proceed further to the next level. Example, you need to have a solid evergreen academy. You need to have solid tutorials where people can be fed. And this is extremely important. Then the second big part, and I really happy that also Crystal is here because she's actually extremely on this side, on this core of this functionality, is safety. Why we need to have a safe space. That's why ecosystem meetups, you need to show developers that you care about the ecosystem and you can drive a thought leader in the ecosystem specific topics. And this, I want to point it out, this is not product specific. This is all about topics, right? For example, all the layers 2 out there, what you want to speak about specific architecture, design pattern around layer 2s. You don't want to speak what you shipped last week. And I think this safe space developers care about and are extremely important that you are developing kind of an importance around this. Then the third part is love and belongings. So this is basically dipping down on more localized activation, like smaller hackathons, workshops, running specific ambassador program and specific community engagement. And then I will not furthermore, but then you have extra things that will make your developer community stronger. So this is a QR code where we kind of deep down on the hierarchy of needs for developers, and I will definitely share more, and we will speak more about that. So I mentioned a little bit, but we need to transition to a fully Web3 community building. Not just using Web3 tooling, but also really embrace having this festival of company together and showing developers that you care about not just your product, but the entire ecosystem. What does it mean, this? Co-innovation partnership. You want to have community, developer community, company doing this with you. You want to have a festival of companies doing workshop with you. And then it's all about relationship. You want to build this relationship not just during hackathon. You want to have a strategically post-developer activation. And I think that's extremely important. So you want to engage developers successfully. How you want to focus on education, curiosity. What we mentioned before is you want to avoid traditional marketing tactics, but also be honest and be authentic. I think this is extremely important why you want to do that. This is another framework that we built back in the days, but this is how to show organization how you can be agnostic, but in the same time caring about the ecosystem and how you can drive specific product activation conversion. And without this part will never be effective. And we can share this. I don't think actually it's readable that well, but you will see on the recording. And these are all the local activation, and you can take this and use it as you want. So tools and documentation is your most valuable assets. You want to also feed them with specific tutorials on the docs. And there is this rule about hello words, how long need to take. I will not go deep down, but most important, my recommendation is always use hackathons and specific single activation to push your engineering team to ship, but also to prioritize features. In the past, at least 2 years, we were prioritizing feature based on hackathon feedbacks, and this feedback loop is super important. So you could not do single activation without evergreen initiatives. So one important part is that you want to run evergreen initiative similar to what academies are, similar to what evergreen hackathon are. I really like the example of what Superfluid does with evergreen hackathons. It's super interesting, and it's engage continuously developers. Grants program. So this is extremely important, and it's also very interesting to see that even if you're bringing authenticity to your ecosystem, if you're not successful in create these evergreen programs and showing compassion in what you're doing, these developers will never stick out. Cool. And important, create this platform to highlight success of this developer, right? You want them to show whatever they build in a hackathon, in a developer community call. You want to show them what they build in different contribution. You want to prioritize this contribution around the ecosystem, and also mostly be supportive of what you are doing. This is also a very interesting fact. I will not speak about a lot. I wanna actually mention a use case that we did in the past and worked really well. With a colleague of mine, we started something called Builder Nights. These Builder Nights were agnostic and ecosystem events with the goal of trying to discuss specific topics in the ecosystem. We started with 437. We started with layer 2 discussion. And it actually, like, we literally create a movement. And this is actually where the welcome remarks. And these are our tech pillars, why we want to stay true to developers. So we build a movement. And not just we are saying that we build a movement, but a lot of people were writing, hey, it's great. For example, here you can see, I don't know if you can see, but no promotion, no say pitch, no VCs. People really appreciate the fact that we were trying to defend the full right of the audience to get the information as most agnostic as possible, so that they can do a judging after to see whatever they want to build afterwards. So why building a movement is important. This was one feedback that we had back at Ethos Safari, and was very interesting because there were other meetups before, right? So a lot of companies speak about their products, and we actually took the other approach. We actually spoke about a specific topic, how you enable peer-to-peer payments around the sub-Saharan Africa ecosystem, and actually people love that, right? And in the same time, we were speaking about, okay, this is our layer 2s, but that's a consequence. Safety, this is something that Crystal will mention about, and I will get fast to the point. But long story short is that you need to create a safe space for those developers to discuss, criticize, and give feedback fully organic to you. This is something that we really care about, not just because we're saying, but this is something that we really saw that art on our ends, right? Like, we organized more than 11 Asia Builder Nights, and all these had specific feedbacks on why creating verticalized meetups, fully agnostic, no shilling, was actually creating a safe space for them to give feedbacks. So the lesson learned here is that don't over-engineer, leverage the local community partners that will able to advocate for you and for your vertical meetups, but most important, include different ecosystem players and make sure that you are giving a voice to those local communities. Cool. Results, I don't want to speak too much about results, but we ran this movement on Asia last year, and we had fully organic, more than 9 million of organic impressions. Bunch of people were involved in this. Bunch of people want to be involved in this for 2024 and 2025, and it's just crazy what people are still remember why we create this. Not is what we did, is why and how we create this. Cool. Now, without this compassion, this human side, this will never be possible. That's why I welcome Crystal to take the second parts, and if you want, ask questions. Thank you, Crystal, and yeah, welcome everybody.
Thank you, Francesco. Which one do I hit?
It's just down.
All right, here we go. Y'all ready to make a hot mess? Yay. Okay. Cool. So I'm Crystal. I am the founding member of JournoDAO. I have a 500 RYT yoga certification. I was also at Unlock Protocol. And basically, I explore the intersections of humanity, technology, and the mystical with my work. And I was also the former director of community at Consensus, a photojournalist, and I specialize in strategic comms and community building. So what makes a community resilient? There's many elements that makes a community resilient. Some of them are regenerative leadership, self-awareness, I think that's one of the biggest ones, mission-driven work, and safe spaces and beautiful oopsies. So organizational models based on living systems, it's moving away from this organization as a rigid mechanistic structure. And this is basically the evolution of where we're going. We're in this time of transition where all of the systems outside of technology, everything we live within, is collapsing and finding new ways to regenerate for what we're stepping into. And as community builders, we need to be really hyper aware of this, because the people that are in our charge, that we're creating these safe spaces for, need emergent leadership that can morph and adjust to all of the chaos that we're experiencing. So this is some kind of complex theories. So they will be on my blog, and I'll be talking about these a lot over time in the next few months. But basically, we have living system design, living system culture, and living systems being. And This is a logic of life. So as a regenerative leader, we move in and out of these different different structures and systems. And this is a big one. This is way too complex to get into right now, but we're talking about old traditional systems, which is yesterday's logic, which is top-down hierarchical structures. Where we are right now is over here. We're in this phase, and our technology is built on biomimicry. It is built to mimic emergent systems, not structures and top-down hierarchy. So the slogan of that old trad system was, it's all about the numbers. This old school of thought is giving way to something very different, which is what excites me. It's why I stay in this space, is that we're moving toward everything being about relationships. And as you build community, it is all about relationships. At the end of the day, this is what we come together to do, is move forward in a mission, and that is relational. It is not based on OKRs and metrics. And so again, like our technology, especially those that work in impact DAO spaces and meta crisis, this is us right here. Our technology it moves, it's fluid. It has to be able to move. If we put it into rigid structures, it will break. And in that breaking, the community itself is not safe, and it's not good for our developers to learn and be in. And I love this quote. If you want to build a ship, don't gather people together to collect wood, and don't assign the tasks and the work, but teach them to long for the immensity of the sea. Gather people together around a mission, move them forward to a big vision. It doesn't matter how you build the ship just has to be able to navigate the tsunami that's coming at us. And this is kind of, all of it right here. So as community builders, we need to rally around a mission. At JournoDAO, we have a mission to help fix journalism with decentralization. Sometimes we know what it looks like, sometimes we don't. But because we're able to move in and out of how we serve our community and what our purpose is at the end of the day, we can always come back together for it. And we really are just a group of Gen Xers held together by fart jokes. So the takeaway for individual DevRels and individual community builders for today's talk is leadership dynamics, and basically compassion in the code is one of the things that I really want to focus on. I want compassion to be baked into our technology so that my niece, who is 6 years old, when she goes to use her tech, it doesn't extract from her and it doesn't see her as the product. That it is fluid and it is designed for her generation to navigate the shit show that we've handed to them. So so the takeaway here for an individual is to work on these three things, and there's a QR code coming that has all this online. The big thing is self-awareness. It's understanding who you are in any situation, and at the end of the day, knowing where you stand in this whole ecosystem, and having compassion for those that you work with. Again, patience and silence. Creating space so that things can come into our thoughts and move our missions forward. And then empathy. How much time we got here? Okay, good. Empathy is another big one, and this is what, Francesco, you have this in spades. You are one of the kindest, empathetic developers I've ever worked with, and engineers, and that is the sweet spot. When you can find the technical mind and someone that has compassion and kindness, that is your leader. That's the person you want to put forward, give them the platform, and they can help build the systems we need to move forward. So here's the QR code. I'll get out of the way. So building a safe container, beautiful oopsies is definitely one. That is my niece's term that I think she got from somewhere. And basically, it's not being afraid to fail. Giving people permission in your communities to make mistakes. We're all human. We're going to fuck up everything. And give people permission to do that so that before that mistake becomes something you can't maintain, you've acknowledged the fact that you need to fix it. And that is one of the things that I think we need to embrace more, is just being messy humans. And deep listening is another really big one. When you're in a community container, don't be multitasking, don't be distracted. If you're having a deep conversation, have it, be present with it, listen. Don't try to interject your points. That deep listening is where you make that human connection and create that safe space. And I just love this quote. Softness is when I surrender to what is, and at the same time, keep moving forward. It is when I surrender to what is without giving up. And if I need to let it go, I will. And in our systems, because of the way they are constantly changing, we need to be able to let things go and move on to what's coming next, even if we don't know what that is. And as Ram Dass, my yoga guru, says, in the end, we're all just walking each other home. And that's it.
Sounds
all right. Good. So now we are going to have a conversation about all this stuff. And thank you. Got questions? Ask them.
I would say I wanna go back. That we have still some time. Oh, the clicker for the. I wanna go back to the pyramid, right? Like we were speaking about safe, safe spaces. Like literally the second level around, why ecosystem matters. Like how we can really like deliver a full safe space, right? I think this is also a question that pop up a lot, like around what we discussed before. And yeah, I think like one of the best ways is provide this kind of space where you speak about topics and verticals, but anything else that you think is relevant?
I think all of it's relevant. Let's see. Let's break down love and belongingness. What do you think about that one? Like, how do you do that in a hackerspace? How do you create that container for that kindness and that loving space to exist?
For hacker houses, hackathon?
Yeah. Or just for any.
Yeah, I mean, I think you always need to give like a direction of what developers can build. Like you need to have like conversion, for example, bounties, and in the same time you want to have like vertical bounties, right? I think that's why this hackathon is super interesting. You have like track bounties and sponsor bounties, and developers can still target both, but at the same time create and build dApps that are kind of like focused on their own narrative, right? I think that's super important. And I think also one big part, like when you're kind of like creating this safe space, is that you are basically building instruments to kind of like feed and nurture your developer audience, right? Through like ambassador programs, to like very specific like product workshops. And I think this is also like very important. But you can. That's what I'm trying to state before in the presentation, is that you cannot go down in the funnel without having solidified the first two parts. Maybe like I want to show you these parts, and I give you the words like. Let me see. So I want to show you again the funnel, right? That's super important. Yeah. Oh, but I have this. So funnel one, right? So this is why all your strategy need to be driven by something like that, right? When I kind of like started this, like the idea was that okay, how we can divide specific conversion, activation, and ecosystem. And like the lesson learned is that if you don't solidify this part of the funnel, you will not able to successfully actually have product conversion strategies, right? And I think that's why going back to the pyramid, without having the first two levels fully solidified, you will not be ready to successfully convert or like create excitement around your products.
No, that makes total sense. And what comes to mind too is in the ambassador program, we had our workshops, our bi-weekly workshops, and our ambassadors would come in. They got to know us and our DevRels that would come in and talk about our individual products. And they got to actually really explore and get deep into the technology in a very safe container to ask questions. And then when we transitioned into IRL hackathons, like in Istanbul, and ambassadors were able to actually work with the DevRels they learned from online, like seeing them light up like that human relationship allowed them to then dive deeper into the tech and build beautiful things. I feel like that is the circle there, that it's relational again.
Yes, and just quick background like on this ambassador program. So basically the narrative was, instead actually like focusing on specific workshop, let's divide on type of contributions. As we mentioned before, there are different type of contribution. You have from like content creation to like giving webinars to actually creating PRs and contributing code, right? So we said we went on the opposite side. We divided the contribution types and we created programming based on that. And while we did that, we create specific tracks that were product focused and also like, as you mentioned, like compassion focused. And I think this was also very important because this type of webinars also gave kind of an adding value compared to other activation that you see in the space. And the feedback were great.
Yeah, no, they loved it. And I think we saw it at Camp Biddle too. Like having that organic space that people could just learn comfortably with time and ask questions of some of the leaders in the industry, that allowed them to really dive deep into the technology and learn in that safe space.
Yes. So Camp Biddle, I think, was extremely useful. And also, like, there are always two ways. And this is our recommendation for everybody that listening to this, right? Even if you're doing a very product-specific workshop, right? Like, and we did that, right? When we started from scratch, build your own MetaMask app. Like, the narrative is build the use case first, and how you do that, you're building the snap. But the most important part, for example, going back to Camp Biddle, was we had different like webinars that were from like start from scratch to build your first gaming app. So there were, this was like the main, the why and the how we want to do that, and the what was a secondary, so how we do that. And I think like people are attracted by the use case first, and then you are the one that is in charge to like pushing like how you do that through SDK, through snaps. And I think this is extremely important to see the difference. That's why, you know, like when we're speaking about the second part around, you know, safety, is that without actually like pushing like a very focused, verticalized initiative, you cannot go to the next level and speak a very specific product conversion initiative. And I think that that's quite what kind of like we learned during the way.
And I feel too like the ecosystem itself is going to begin moving towards being product focused in a way that's competitive. It's our product is the best, our L2, our protocol is the best. We're all doing the same thing. This ecosystem is the size of a thimble. We need to begin to break out of those confines of it has to be this product or it has to be built this way, and let's look at what is the end solution. Let's use all of the protocols, all of the products that fit this together instead of being in competition with one another to be the best. Let's put it all together and look at the entire ecosystem that way, and I think that also translates into leadership. I think we need to begin looking at how we lead these groups, because it requires a different type of leadership style so that you can be one that can say, okay, our product might not be appropriate for this use case. Let's use a competitor's. You know, let's make the thing we're building beautiful, and let's not jam whatever we want to jam into it just because we need to or because there's a bounty.
100%. I think also one lesson learned here was like, so we are doing, in general, in the ecosystem, you see very single activation, right? And I think one thing that kind of the ecosystem teaches us is that you need to have ways to have developer continually contributing around the ecosystem. An example, like when I spoke and mentioned before, like the super fluid kind of like evergreen hackathon, is that developers, even when are finishing up, like, you know, tomorrow, the build-a-thon, like, okay, how I can contribute next, you know? And the cool thing is that you have ways to do that. You know, we had, I mean, we have still, like, because this is Academy, like, there are different ways to continuously contribute in the ecosystem through, like, even grants program. And I think every organization should be kind of, like, thoughtful about how you bring individual activation to evergreen activation. But it's something that is an add-on, the evergreen activation, right? Because then people like, that's why, for example, in the pyramid, like you have like, you know, virtual hackathons, evergreen activation, they're on the last one, those are extra. The most important part here is that you solidify not just being present at flagship events, but also the access to resources and basic training. If you're not getting your hello world in 5 minutes, your docs don't comply with like specific tutorials that you can ship in like less than 30, then you're not successful in doing that, and you cannot go up in the pyramid activations.
Yeah, and it's also where that relationship comes back into play too, is that as the dev realm, if you create that evergreen relationship, they can transition through all of these different elements as this person works with your technology, then they're always going to come back to you for that trust and safety no matter where you are, no matter when it is. It could be 5 years from now. But they are always going to remember the relationship of how you taught them to learn this thing, and they're always going to come back to you in wherever you are in this builder needs hierarchy.
100%. How many of you guys are DevRel professional full-time? Raise your hand. I'm just thinking. Okay, cool, cool. So probably like as you know, like it's a very cross-functional work, right? And while I put this framework here is that you probably can cover different ways, but in reality there are also like different DevRels more focused on content, different DevRels more focused on like giving like IRL workshops or like optimizing docs, right? So it's very interesting also like what you put out in terms of like organizational structure, how also like a team can be like this kind of orbit model, because at the end of the day, you need to kind of like complement each other in the team, right? So like also like I thought, like I think like you had a question previously on how we are taking not just the pyramid, but this funnel to the next level is defining, not just defining JDs, but basically defining specific roles that are all overlapping with each other. You will always have more people, more focus on specific like a task and specific goals, right? And you see that naturally, right? You cannot force people to do what you know, like specific things.
Yeah, and that's where you get back to that emergent thing. Like you might have this vision of what you want people to do, but what people want to do is really up to them. And in the world we have moved into, this living systems logic is how things are going to function. And our leadership has to reflect that. We need to build in buffers and organic spaces where people can move in and out. And as DevRels, you know, having headcount with X amount of DevRels for any organization might not be a logical thing moving forward. It might be easier to have pods of DevRels that have complementary skill sets. One might be good at technical documentation. One might have that kindness, empathy. Yeah. And then you put them in a pod and you move them in and out of the structures. You just plug it into a structure where they need to be so they can move the mission forward of the structure. So as a leader, we have to recognize this is the evolution, and our technology already has it. You know, the biomimicry is baked into it. So we now have to reflect the human side of that living systems logic.
When I saw that for the first time, I asked myself a lot, like, this is very futuristic. I always like trying to understand what is the intermediary solution. You know, like I think, you know, organization will still function how we know. So, but how we are bringing like this ecosystem, like on sub teams, for example, that's one answer. But anything to add on that?
How to bring that structure in? It's really hard. Harvard and I believe the Wharton Business School have a lot of documentation on how to implement these living systems logic. It's very difficult because we are in that transition phase from trad to emergent. So things are going to break, and there are very few organizations in the world that have really figured this out. So I think that our tech and our ecosystem is going to lead this movement forward into figuring out how do you take the good elements of trad leadership, because there's definitely good structures in there that are nice to have. How do you put them into an emergent system and make them resilient enough that they can be tested and pushed up against without completely breaking the entire structure itself?
Yeah. I think actually we saw a little bit with Builder Nights, because we always add community members, even sometimes with product. If you are successful in building like a developer community that actually cares about each other, you will also get different like external contributions. You know, we had like you know, like designer or freelancer were coming like volunteering at Builder Nights or just in random hackathons. We know, you know, like when we're enabling this permissionless innovation that, you know, other developers can build on top of your technology. So I think this is also like a good way to see also how to include external communities to drive your mission. And that's kind of like exponential, you know?
I think ETHDenver is the best example of this, or one of them. I mean, this is just community building at scale, and people come in and out of these systems and like, hey, I can do this, let me just hop in here and volunteer and do this thing, and you don't ask permission. You just come into the community and you help build, and then you come back out of the community when you're done, and you re-enter when you need to be back. And I feel like this whole event, how it's evolved over the years, and how like I was able to just slide and be like, hey, what do you need? They're like, I need XYZ. I'm like, great. And I think that is a really good example of a living systems logic, and it's messy. That's the beauty of ETHDenver. It's a hot mess, but that's kind of why we're here, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point, like hot mess, right? Like here there were some lessons learned about, you know, like don't over-engineer. Always don't assume, for example, that, you know, you need to do one main activation a year for being successful. Like developers really like see and show authenticity. Doesn't mean that a social media post like need to be perfect, a picture need to be perfect. And I think this is exactly like the lesson learned here is that having model activation, showing your face where you know that there is a strong communities where like when people can contribute and they need support, I think that's extremely important. And the other big part is including like other ecosystem players, tapping in other communities. It's also like a lesson learned that we saw that it's super interesting to have other community members fully like not just criticizing, but giving you feedbacks. Yeah. You really know that those feedbacks are honest feedbacks because they were never be building as snaps before or these kind of things, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we saw it in the ambassador program too. Like the day we launched, I broke like 3 things. And everybody rolled up in there and they're like, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. I'm like, that was me. But that allowed us to set a tone where everyone was like, oh, I broke something. And so we actually just made a bug channel. And people would be like, yeah, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be fixed. So the community got to be empowered in helping us clean the mess up or make the mess together. It goes both ways. So setting that tone from the very beginning and not over-engineering. And then as we pivoted a few times as we were going through that program because we saw there were different needs. And we had an assumption in our mind ahead of time that we'd mapped out and we were wrong. So we just went ahead, let's go this way. And that is where we get into that emergent leadership is you have to be able to pivot and not force your vision onto a system that says we don't want that. We need this. So you have to be able to understand what the need is, and it goes back to empathy. As a DevRel, having that empathy to remove the ego and be like, man, I got that wrong, but you're right, let's do what you just said, and then lean into it and move forward. That's how community builds.
Sounds good. I think we are in the 5-minute range.
Oh, yeah.
Like any question from the audience? Or like anything that we had, criticize, feedbacks, there you are.
Don't give him the mic.
There is no pressure.
Hi. That was a great talk. I think, Crystal, you summarized it really well at the end, like tying it all together. But I'm wondering if you could talk about more about the failure modes of the traditional system and what those feel like. Because I've definitely experienced them like as a developer at like a more structured hackathon, like on Facebook campus or something, and it's very like competitive and no one really cares that you're there. Everyone's just kind of like trying to like build something better than the other person. And I think maybe you can tell me how that contrasts to some of these more just open-ended, more human-focused events and just the approach.
Ooh, that's a great question. I think with the more human-focused events or something that is more emergent, you just kind of naturally feel it. There's never friction. You don't feel alienated or in a mode of competition. I think in a traditional structure, I mean, at least for me, I've never really been in many traditional structures ever. So when I step into those, I can intuitively feel that this is not the place I'm supposed to be in. But if the mission is strong enough, I'll stick around. But so for me, being an empath, it's partially intuitive. I think Francesco probably has a very different approach because you come at it more through logic.
Yeah, I think one thing to say is that in the past years, I'll always try to push the developer ecosystem further, and I never actually concentrate myself on kind of like, I'm not saying selling or pitching, but socializing those developer activation around the company, right? I think this is one lesson learned that I definitely want to do more, and also that's why these frameworks are exactly the way how to do that, right? From the funneling to the pyramid, it's actually helping to speak the same language with everybody and socializing through different teams. Because you will have different teams thinking about that your DevRel team will provide different values. That's why also speaking about that, right? Like one suggested structure that when I'm seeing right now is this will also take out the community terms because it's extremely general and is perceived as what does community does. You have user community, you have developer communities, everybody's perceiving community that. And with some framework like that, it's much easier to show value and standardize the language, right? When you're speaking about both metrics.
Yeah, and from the human side, looking at that community container and then being able to recognize like the different personalities, where the friction points might be, what is the sentiment. Always knowing what the pulse of the community is so that you can leave those spaces for those other more technical things to happen. It's both. It's the technical and it's the human side. They both kind of have to go together. So.
Yes, you need to show this safe space. If not, you will never be successful.
Yeah.
And I think we have 10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Thank you so much, ETHDenver, and I see you next time.
Thanks
everybody.
Crystal. Bye. Thank you, Francesco.